All right, coming up, we got David Moses coming to the Zoom interview in just a second. I'm joined today by my good friend Jim Cox.
Hey, that's me again.
Welcome to the Ratnest podcast, the ratneststickercode.com, where you can get works of art, stickers, zines, prints, all kinds of stuff from artists from across the country. And here on Ratnest Podcast, where we talk to those people.
There's some really cool stuff on there. You should go look at it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
That was nice of you to say.
Yeah,
Thanks for plugging that.
I bought some stuff recently.
That's like super cool. In the meantime,
as we said before, my name's Jim, and this is Matt.
Hi.
This is painted by a good friend of ours, Immune.
Yes.
A little shout out to him.
I'm just going to say one word answers this whole episode. Yes, that's true.
He's a very talented artist who no longer arts very much. So I'm going to call him out right now.
You hear that?
He should get to arting again.
He's going to be mad about that one, dude. You're going to call him out on not arting?
I mean, this thing was painted in 2019, and I think it was the last thing he did.
COVID, dude. He got the COVID for a year.
I did 100 pieces of art during COVID.
That's crazy.
Yo,
what's up, dude?
Hey, what's going on?
We are recording. I don't see any video. I got your audio.
Okay, hang on one sec.
There it is.
What's
good,
up?
It's good, man. How you doing?
All right, so
I'm doing great.
This is my buddy Jim, Dave.
Jim,
Nice to meet you, David.
pleasure to meet you, man.
So welcome to the Ratnest podcast. I appreciate you being on this today, man. Really appreciate it. We've been chatting back and forth for a little while now, but stoked to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of things and see what you have going on.
Awesome. Sounds great.
How's
Happy to be here.
how's the weather in North Carolina? And not to start off too generic, but I'm kind of curious.
It's off and on. Like sometimes it's like freezing cold. And then sometimes we get really nice days like yesterday, which was a little bit breezy, but really sunny, and took the kids out to the park and they had a great time. So
Rad, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother lives out there, for anyone listening. That's why I have such close ties to North Carolina weather, so I can talk about it with him, you know. No, but I want to just get into it, man. You have a lot of stuff going on. For anyone that isn't familiar with your work or even what I'm doing with Ratnest, I want to give them like a little kind of background on what you've been up to and kind of how we got to be in cooperation with each other.
absolutely. Yeah. So I started basically I started cartooning in earnest in 2017. It was something that I was into when I was a kid, and I sort of lost interest after high school, getting into music and stuff like that. So 2017, I started cartooning again, and had to figure out a way to get this stuff out. So started out doing Gumroad, and then I was like, I needed an umbrella for myself where I can just do whatever I want. So that is what Pastiche Comics is, and I've been running that for probably 2 years now, and putting out a couple of titles. Galactic Junk Squad, well, more like family, is one that I is like all me. Final Frontiersman.
Sorry, real quick, before we just start like going through them, I have so many questions about Galactic Junk Squad, well, more like friends. One, where the fuck did the name come from?
Great title.
Yeah, so so it kind of started, I had started writing this other comic, and just writing it, and I was going to look for a cartoonist to do it, or an artist for it. And my wife was like, why don't you just get back into drawing and do it yourself? And I'm like, it was like semi like espionage military kind of thing. And I was like, I'm not that great at perspective. I'm not that great at all these things. So one day in June of 2017, my wife and I were driving, and this idea like just dropped into my head while we were driving. And it was basically like, what if there was a family of space hillbillies that were running a junkyard, And I was like, this is it. This is the thing that I want to draw. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to fit as much Kirby crackle and as much like squiggly metal lines as I can into this. This is perfect. And it's in space, so I don't have to use perspective a ton. Um, so, so then,
If anything's warped, you can just say it's because they're in space, like it's supposed
exactly. The laws of physics and everything don't apply the same there that they do here.
to. Right.
So that was like, essentially it started out as a comedy, like this one shot 11-page thing, and then as I was writing it I was like, well, what if this happened? Oh, and then what if this happened? And what it became was essentially a sandbox for me to do everything and anything that I wanted to do. Just explore ideas, draw, like I can fit whatever I want to into the story. I can like work out my own, fears and insecurities in this thing, and so essentially that's where it came from. And I just thought it would be funny to sort of like force everybody to say the full name every time. Galactic Junk Squad, well, more like family.
When you presented it to me and I got a copy of it finally and like checked it out, I was like, this is hilarious, because every time someone asks about this, they go, do you know what I'm talking about? Galactic Junk Squad. Well, more like family. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you know what I'm talking about. So funny. It's a great name. And like you were saying, it represents all types of ideas when you're creating all these different characters, that you're able to kind of let go of a little piece of yourself in each one of them to create the dynamic.
Exactly. Yeah, like I find myself in each of the characters. Like, I identify with different aspects of each of them. So, somebody said, is it a reflection of your relationship with your own family? And I was like, well, it's kind of my relationship with myself,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It's kind of like art therapy in that way, right there.
Exactly. And I take a lot of inspiration from Kirby with that, like Jack Kirby, he was like traumatized from all this war experience, and he just poured it into and worked it out through his art. Not that it necessarily went away, but he was able to like come to conclusions, based on what he created. And I respect that.
As an artist that looks up to Jack Kirby immensely, do you feel like there's a disconnect between like his I don't know, place in the comic world nowadays, when, rest in peace, not to say anything bad against Stan Lee, but where everyone knows Stan Lee's name, and maybe not everybody, maybe half those people know who Jack Kirby is, if that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say something bad about Stan Lee. I don't. No, I'm just kidding. He is not my favorite. Frankly, Stan Lee was not a good writer. He was sort of shoehorned into comics. I mean, he wanted to do novels, and so I think he sort of took out his frustrations on the medium a little bit by like over explaining and saying what's happening while you can clearly see what's happening. Like that's a big like no. Like you don't do that in comics, right? But anyway, I digress. Yeah, so I think I didn't really start attaching to Jack's work until close to his 100th birthday. Again, back in 2017, I sort of like rediscovered him and was just I don't know, like I could not get away from how amazing his work was to me. And so I think there have been a lot of efforts that are past due to get him the recognition he deserves. But it's still nowhere near where it should be. Now, there's a journalist named Abraham Reisman who's come out with a book, or it's coming out, called True Believer, and it's about Stan Lee, and it's sort of an expose, and I'm really excited to read that.
Yeah, a little bit more like of the closer truth to maybe the real story or the inside edition of it.
Exactly.
So going from Galactic Junk Squad, talking about Kirby and his influence on your illustration when you kind of decided to go gung ho and full force, and to quote Globitz, who we interviewed earlier,
I
um,
love him.
double down on yourself,
Mm,
and just kind of like go for it and start.
yeah.
Is it past itch? Does it matter how I say that? It's
I say past each just because it's like,
It's
you
fancy,
know,
pastiche.
yeah, right, right. I wanna tie a couple of things. Like nostalgia is like itching something from the past in yourself,
Hmm.
and so it's like, but it's also a pastiche where it's like a combination or sort of like an amalgam of something. And I just kind of wanted to play on those two ideas. But I call it pastiche.
okay. So I've been saying it wrong since I've got your comics. So I
That's okay. It's all right.
we haven't had a conversation to clarify that yet. So I've been telling everybody passage, but I can't read either, so that could be half the struggle.
That's why
That's why
comics are amazing, right?
yeah, that's why comic books are so important. Is 'cause you only have to know how to kind of read.
Just gotta be able to see.
There's a lot of pictures. When you're drawing something though, and you're trying to explain a narrative, do you ever come to that point where you feel like you need to add more dialogue, or are you kind of comfortable with the amount of dialogue you use in your comics to kind of like let it explain the shots themselves, or even a joke or something that can be taken two different ways, like you just let
Hmm.
the reader kind of decide?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I always try to err on the side of making the visuals explain things. Um, so, like I had mentioned, I was writing comics before I started drawing them again. And so, what happens a lot in um, like writer focused comics is a lot of dialogue boxes and a lot of like heavy narration and dialogue, and the artist is sort of stalemated, right? They have to figure out something to accompany the writer's musings, and because it's such a dynamic and synergistic medium. I hate using that word because of the business world, but um, you know, it really has to be a balance. And to me, you can have silent comics, but you cannot have pictureless comics. So like what I try to do, and I'm so let me back up a little bit. I'm always editing. I'm always, until the ink is dry, I'm editing. So what I will start to do now is I'll start out with layouts. So it's got words and pictures together. And then I will sometimes write a script. And that allows me to sort of fill out the ideas more, make sure that I'm saying everything that I want to say, and just, you know, maybe put a little bit of a writerly slant on the language. And then I will start pencils. And, one of the first things I do is fill in the words, right? And even up to that point, like when I'm writing the script, I get a little bit wordy. And so when I'm doing the pencils and I'm doing the lettering, I'm always editing. Okay, how can I say this a little bit more, with a little bit more brevity, a little bit clearer and more concise? And then I'll put the final page on top of the pencils, and I'll kind of lightbox things at first. And even then, I'm editing from what I did in the pencil stage with that lettering. So again, I try to. It's a give and take. It's sort of like feeling your way through it, stumbling through in the dark a little bit. That's my process, because I want to be a cartoonist. I want to be somebody who does both things uh, as equally well as I can.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
it really does show in your work. I mean, I wouldn't be able to look at it and say, "My God, he edited the hell out of it," but you can tell because there's every line has its purpose. You know what I mean? Or every bit has its place, and you can tell that each one is thought out and placed right, and there's no excess. You know what I mean? And that to me, that simplicity yet very intricate design that goes into being able to do that. That, I mean, that's beautiful, and it only comes from that constant editing. You never get that if you're just a one-off. You know, you sketch it really
Right.
quick, there's going to be so much excess, but you
Yeah.
can, and it really speaks to, or it really says something when you look at it as an observer. Oh, there, you can just feel the time and the energy and the try that went into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks finished. I mean, there's no, it's
Absolutely,
professional.
absolutely.
It's concise. It's tight. And it shows. And I think that's why, I mean, you get, uh, I mean, jobs, and you're able to work as an illustrator and continue doing this beyond just working for yourself. I mean, do you have a journalism or English background at all when it comes
Um,
to, like, writing and interviewing?
Actually, yeah, I do actually. I went to school for English with a major or a concentration in literature. So I do have that background. That was the thing that I knew that if I went to college, that's the thing that I knew that I would finish a degree in
Yeah.
because I enjoyed it a lot. So
Did you
um,
write a lot in high school and stuff? Like you always were drawing and writing and like creating stuff?
yeah, it's kind of gone through many different phases. So like, you always go through your poetry phase. I went through a phase where I was writing short stories and like a script for a film, and then it was like, oh no, comics is what I want to do. It's like exactly perfect for what I want to do. So, by the way, thank you very much for saying those incredibly nice things. That means a lot to me. So I appreciate that a lot.
We don't bullshit here on Ratnest. So you can trust that it's true.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I barely even look at anything. I just fucking throw it on the site. So don't ask me.
Yeah, he definitely didn't spend 3 hours researching things and looking things up before we did
You
this.
didn't even know I knew you had an English degree. Ha!
He got his
Yeah, I was like,
eye
man.
out, following you, making sure you know everything about you.
Did we talk about that? We had one conversation before this conversation, and I'm not gonna lie, I was probably like 3 beers deep, and I don't remember parts of it. We were yip yapping on FaceTime, just going back and forth one night. I don't know if I came off like I was,
Oh,
but I was.
oh no, that was great. That was a really great. No, seriously, that was a really great first time to like. I was driving at the time, so I was sort of in a similar space of like semi distracted. So you have nothing to worry about.
Dude. So we were combined, the two of us. We were drunk driving. He was driving. I was drunk. Funny, dude. But it was a good introduction. I was telling Jim, a few of the artists and stuff I've reached out to personally like that, just because I do like what they're doing. I appreciate what you're contributing to what I'm doing, and I just wanted to kind of make it a little more personal than Instagram messages or, I don't know, emails, whatever it is. And then the thought of this whole podcast thing just kind of was after that even. And I was like, well, I've already talked to a couple of the guys. I know I can bullshit with them for a half an hour or whatever. Like, let's get on this, you know? So it's funny how it worked out. But
Yeah, and that
or go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that makes all the difference too. Like, it makes me feel good that you are, reaching out and that you care. It means a lot to me. So I appreciate that.
I care, dude. Well,
The love fest.
a little back tracking to what we were talking about a minute ago.
Sure.
Galactic Junk Squad, and then just the love for Kirby, but that really spills over, I think, into Final Frontiersman. Why can't I talk right now?
Can't talk.
Final Frontiersman.
Yes.
The comic you did that is like a tribute, basically, to kind of his style, and then mashed up with a speech that Richard Nixon, or was it documents that Richard Nixon wrote? What was the whole story behind that? Because I'm still a little unclear with it.
Yeah. So that one came about as an idea. So my friends, the Stewart brothers, who live not too far from me, wrote that out. And Harrison, one of the brothers, who's an amazing writer, he actually manages a comic shop around here. But he was like late night internet searching and came across a presidential archives and found the speech that Nixon would have given if the moon mission had been a disaster. Like
And
if they had failed.
And it was pre-recorded. He had recorded the speech, or was it written?
It was written down.
Okay.
Yeah, it was written down. So his speechwriter, I forgot who his speechwriter was, but he had this whole thing prepared, and it's really, it's like kind of beautiful. And I shudder to say anything attached with Richard Nixon would have that. But I know that he didn't write it, which redeems that. But so yeah, it was like, okay, well, what? So Harrison started talking it through, and we started like bouncing ideas off of each other, and he was basically like, okay, what if it was all a ploy, right? Like, what if it was all a front for what was really going on, So like essentially we discovered a black hole, and Nixon wants to send somebody in there to be the first to go in and maybe pull out some secrets of the universe, and transmit them back, because we know we're going to lose the dude, and we got to have a front for it. So that's where the speech comes in.
Wow.
Yeah, Harrison and Bo Stewart, they're brilliant guys. So I was really excited to do that.
I wish I had a copy with me. We actually had, I think, 2 or 3 copies of each comic that you sent me initially, and we're sold out of all of them except for 1 copy I think I have of Holy Mountain still.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, which is
awesome.
An awesome, I mean, not to segue right into that, but you did do this little, was it 5.5 by 8?
By 8.5.
Yeah, 5.5 by 8 page comic for Holy Mountain Printing. Those your boys, are they in North Carolina? Where are they at?
Yeah, they're right down the street from me too. They're
you guys just had like an idea, like let's make a comic and send it out with the orders, or what?
Yeah, basically. So I had connected with them. I found out about them in like 2018 or something, because they were releasing, they were doing distribution for a band that I grew up loving called Zayo.
I know Zayo, dude.
Oh yeah.
We know some Zayo just because we're from West.
No. Yeah, man.
Tough guys.
Zayo, Daniel sounds like a choking snake. I love it. That's what always came to my mind. Well, anyway, like I saw something about these guys. I think Zayo tweeted something like, hey, yeah, we're being distributed by Holy Mountain. And so I looked them up, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are like right down the street from me. And initially I had emailed them to say, hey, can I come by your store and like scan copies of the first issue of Galactic Junk Squad, because they're trying to charge me $8 a page at FedEx, and I don't have that money right now. And nothing happened out of that. But then later I was like, I've got volume 1 with me and Final Frontiersman. What the heck? Let me just go by there and drop these off and just say, I appreciate you guys, what you're doing, and it's cool that we're in the same area. So through that I met Danny, who's like the head honcho, and we just connected on our love of like Silver Age stuff, like Kirby and Ditko and just all these different comics related and toy related stuff. And then months later, when I had the issue 4 with Creatures of the Chaos Realm on it, I took those over and dropped them off, and he bought some off of me and carried them in their store. And then he's like, hey, we should do a project together. And inside I'm like, this is what I've dreamed of.
You're like a kid trying to hold it in. You're just like,
totally.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean,
yeah, I was like,
yeah, all right.
We should totally do that. Totally. But like literally I had thought many times I would love to work with them on something. And so for him to initiate it, it was just really gratifying. But he's like, yeah, just come up with a story. We want to feature our mascot, Frank the Templar. And that's about all the direction that I have for you. And so literally I started driving home and like all this stuff, it was like with Galactic Junk Squad, all this stuff just went boom, 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 right into my brain. And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be crazy. So I went home and just like burnt through it. I think the next week I had a script for him to look over, and he's like, yeah, cool, man. Do what you got.
Aren't those little sparks, like those little sparks of just confidence and energy and like the excitement of what could be, and when it happens naturally like that from someone that maybe you've been looking at or looking up to for a while, and it works and it connects. There's no drug, or there's no Adderall can't get you that motivated. Like coffee or meditation can't get you that motivated. A little bit of recognition from someone that you respect is like the biggest motivation you can get, right? Like
totally.
And
absolutely,
it has to be especially vindicating when it came off of you just going in, showing appreciation, dropping your stuff off, and then that's what got it for you. You know, you weren't going and selling.
You weren't
yourself.
selling exactly. That's
right.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those moments of like, inspiration, and I don't know, divine intervention, if you will. Yeah, it was awesome.
You mentioned the B-side kind of comic to Galactic Junk Squad on this this latest issue that you did. What was the inspiration? I mean, I get the classic comic style and having the second one flipped and everything, but why did you double up on this one?
So I was working on the characters for that. You know, I was incorporating them into the Galactic Junk Squad, well, more like family story. And as I was drawing them, I'm like, these dudes are badass. Like, I can't just leave them in this spot. Like, there's got to be more. And then I thought, well, I have some friends who are cartoonists, and I can, you know, maybe provide an opportunity for somebody who hasn't been published yet to have a story published. And, you know, I can write the stories, or let me just kind of see who wants to do this and who wants to do how much of it. So like with some of them, you know, like with Corey McDonald, who did the Brutalis one, he basically did everything except he just would bounce ideas off of me. And I would either say, yeah, that's a really great direction to go into, or, oh, what if you did this instead? And he did like 99% of that basically. And then some of the other ones, I would write the script, you know, or like with the one with Nagasi Armada, I wrote the script, and then he sent me the pencils and I did the lettering and inking. But he, you know, he was no less of a collaborator than any of the others. He really brought a whole world into it that I hadn't even conceived of when I wrote it. So like, it was an opportunity to sort of try out a format that I've been interested in, which is like the anthology, and do some collaboration. And it was one of the most fun, exciting experiences creating that I've had, actually, doing that collaboration. So
just to give a little bit of reference to that too, I talked about it, like everyone listening knows what it is, but so it's the second comic in the 4th issue of Galactic Junk Squad, correct? And it's called Creatures from the Chaos Realm, and it's origin stories of the bad guys in your comics.
That's right. Yep.
Each one is illustrated by a different artist.
Yes, exactly. So
just if that last minute and a half didn't make sense, now you know.
That was a great summary.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it was really rad because you have your comic book, and then I didn't know what was attached. So going through it, I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like it's almost like a zine field, bringing the collaboration with all the other artists, but it still focuses and centralizes around your story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, I don't know what it is, if I'm like a narcissist or a megalomaniac, but I really like to be in control of my creative stuff, like have the final say and all this stuff. So I love that aspect about doing my own stuff, but it was really, really cool for me to collaborate and to be able to let go a little bit and let them do things. And I mean, when I was getting pages back from each of them, I was just like, in awe of what they were able to do. And some of them, it was their first, like I say, it was their first published comics work, and they all knocked it out of the park.
Oh yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
like on that note too, just getting something out there that you're like that you have final say in and stuff. I wanted to ask you about the interviews you've been doing with strangers, and you're going to be interviewed with strangers. Is it a different? Do you feel a little bit like less in control, and that's okay when you do these interviews or anything, or is it kind of that same mentality of like, kind of want this to go the way I want it to?
Well, that's a great question. What I love about these is Eddie from Strangers. He basically was like, so let me back up. The way that it all started was um, Pat Rooks of Celery Stalks at Midnight fame. He asked me to do an interview. Eddie wanted to have him featured in the second issue. And he said, hey, I was thinking, and would you be willing to interview me for this? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because I get to ask, you read interviews and you're like, man, I really wish they asked this question, or I'd love to know more about this. And I'm like, now I'm in control and I get to ask whatever I want. Oh. So, the first one with Pat Rooks came out, and then Eddie was like, hey, this is great. If you ever want to do it again, let me know. And I'm like, well, what if I did Josh Bayer? And he's like, yeah, that'd be great. And Josh is like a hero, and I don't know if he knows this, but he's like a mentor to me, like a cartoonist mentor. He's one of the most brilliant cartoonists alive. But I'd listened to several podcasts and read a few interviews from him, and I'm like, I'm missing some things about his work I don't know about yet, and I gotta know. So let me use this opportunity to ask the stuff. And then, essentially that's what it's been with each of the interviews that we've done, where it's sort of, it's towing the line between being in control and totally letting go, because like there are things that I want to know, so I'm gonna start like asking that, and then they just give me so much more and so far beyond that it's just like, okay, I'm just the diving board, and they're gonna do these amazing flips, after they jump off of it.
Yeah,
so
oh yeah.
So it's really an honor that I get to talk to these folks, because I admire every single one of them a lot.
100%, man. Like, done great with these interviews. That's like I didn't have to know that you had an English background. Just reading your interviews and the way the questions are developed and stuff, I knew that you spent some sort of time in grammar school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're so much fun. There are two that are happening for issue 5, which will be coming out, I think, in March. I've done 2, and then I've already got the 6th one like confirmed, and I'm gonna dive into that soon.
Are you being interviewed in issue 5?
No, I'm not.
You're the interviewer. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw like a little brief on it, but I didn't. I thought you were the one being interviewed for the next issue,
but not to my knowledge.
How's it feel being on the other side of the interview?
Yeah. Are we living up to your standards? Would you have asked questions? Are we fucking up, dude?
No, this is amazing. It's it's like, I think it goes back to that like megalomaniacal narcissism thing. Like I always think, well, what if I was being interviewed? How would I answer this question or whatever? So thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
No, it's been a great talk, man. You've given us a lot of insight into what you're doing, and I really like it. Obviously we've never met before, if anyone doesn't know that, but see, I did some looking into your stuff and checking it out beforehand, and it's really cool to be able to kind of get the idea in my head of what it means and what it's going through, and just first instinct, initial 5 minutes, and then get to talk to you right away about it and see exactly where it all came from and see where I was right and where I was wrong. And it's like, it was really interesting, man. Thanks for kind of diving so deep with us and giving us so much like pure give.
No,
Oh,
for
man.
sure. And before we're not wrapping up just yet, but I definitely what's the lowdown on the Patreon situation? So did you just kind of get on that tab, or have you've been doing Patreon for a minute?
No, I started it on December 15th. I was planning to wait till
Brand
the
new.
1st
Okay.
of January, but my wife was like, dude, what are you waiting for? And I was like, well, I've got to have these things perfect and ready to go. And then I was like, no, she's right. Let me just hit the launch button. So essentially what I'm doing there is basically whatever I want. And that includes like I'm doing this like series where I go into like extreme detail on putting together the Tales from the Holy Mountain comic. And then I've got a couple other series, like one is like simple cartooning instruction, like this is how I do this thing. Like one of them is like speed lines, you know, like the action lines.
It's super
And
rad.
I, you know, like I when I was starting out, I was like, how the hell did I do this? Like, and just through trial and error and, you know, whatever I was able to pick up, I started doing them in my own way. And that's what I want to impart to people, you know? And then I've got another series on there that I'm writing called The Letterer Ledger, which is just kind of taking deep dives into, you know, how different letterers accomplish different things. So like the first issue is all about this specific font that I found in a very few comics. And I had to do a lot of research and figure out who did it, where it shows up, and basically why it stopped showing up in different comics. And so I go into detail about those things. And then I talked to Tom Neely, who's just, to me, one of the perfect cartoonists who's able to basically and capture perfectly his intentions with each line. I talked to him about lettering and his process. I have like a set.
And
Um,
Tom Neely just so I'm clear. It's I Will Destroy You, Tom. Right? It's
yes,
he just did the last podcast on the left book last year.
right,
He illustrated that whole thing. Yeah, amazing illustrator. If you don't know who Tom Neely is, go check him out. But
absolutely.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. Yeah, I think his Instagram handle is I Will Destroy You, and he so I have this kind of set sequence of questions about lettering, and I give them to the artist and just let them go for it. And it's really amazing to see their approach. So I did Tom for the first issue, and then I just released one with Rich Tomaso, who's got some amazing. I love Rich's work. He's another perfect cartoonist who, like, whatever he wants to do, he executes it on the page like perfectly. So I'm going to continue that series and fold in a few other series, like a Fantastic Four read through, where we're going to go in and like basically bash Stan Lee quite a lot. But you know, it's going to go into different concepts of like, well, here's the first time that Jack incorporated this technique, you know, or
Yeah.
here's where this
Which is
inker
really
came
the
in.
interesting thing about those comics is
Yeah,
is the way that the illustration was changed and the stylistic choices that are only really attributed to Kirby.
right, exactly.
Um,
And you know, you got different inkers interpreting him and everything like that. So
and you can find what's your Patreon address and everything.
it is patreon.com David Moses.
Just one word, David Moses.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And then on Instagram at
at d.moses.l.
all right.
And then I've got
I
a
didn't want to fuck that up. I was like, it's I forgot what it is.
and then my website is pasteach.com. Just all one word and everything.
Spell that real quick.
Oh yeah, thanks. pastitch.com.
Perfect. There
Past
it is,
itch.
baby.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts you want to throw some wisdom into the world before we break off here?
Well, I want to thank you guys for doing what you're doing. I love Ratnest and everything behind like the whole approach to it is really refreshing and encouraging. Like when you reached out to say that you wanted to carry some of my stuff in the store, it means a lot. But like not only that, you really pushed it, and I appreciate that a lot. I will say to anybody who wants to be a cartoonist or whatever, just do it. Just start. That's it. Just start doing it.
That's in doing these interviews, man. That's kind of the consensus all the artists have. We're just like, just do it every day. Just try every day.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
Yep.
And
that's how you learn.
Eventually, you'll get there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But dude, I'm so happy that you were talking to us, and I'm so happy for every project that you come out with. I know I shouldn't say anything, but I know you have a follow-up to a popular comic coming out that you did. So we'll talk more about that next time we have you back.
Awesome.
When that comes out, we'll come back and we'll shoot the shit again. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. I would love to.
All right, man. It was a pleasure.
David Moses, everyone go check out his Patreon and his Instagram and give him a follow.
The best to you and your family, brother. You take care.
Likewise. Thank you, guys.
Very
Matt,
nice,
Jim. Appreciate it. Likewise. Yeah. I'll see you all around.
Absolutely. Best.
See ya.
Yeah, man.
Good one.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Super nice guy.
Really nice guy.
Really nice guy.
What a pleasant guy.
Nah, super talented, great writer, great illustrator, does the work, promotes other people, everything you can ask for from, I don't know, something like what I'm doing.
Just in the story he told about going into his guys he looked up to and just offering it and getting accepted, that's karma, dude. That's good karma. So that proves the type of guy, character, even without knowing him, only talking to him for 40 minutes, that just proves that type of guy.
There's something there. Not everyone gets that. Yeah.
Yeah. Bad karma doesn't act in that direction.
It happens for those who are worth it happening to.
And he definitely seemed worthy, man. He seems like a good guy. And his stuff, I wasn't bullshitting. Every line is there for a purpose. It has a very, very finalized and completed feel to it.
Some might look at it and think it's a little simplistic if they're not familiar with the comic book culture, especially the 50s Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, like early Marvel, Atlas Comics, all that. It's true to the style.
Right. But it's really hard to make something look sketchy and clean at the same time. And that's that's a really cool comic book style that he's been able to kind of get into.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's great.
And I think it's just going to get better, man. I can't wait to see what else he puts out. I know he's doing, I can't talk about it. We'll talk about it on the next one. But he's doing some more work that I'm super excited about. So
yeah, that's good. I look forward to having him on again.
Oh yeah, well, this has been the Ratnest podcast. Thank you for listening. You can catch us every Friday with new artists talking about crazy and not so crazy things.
Keep trying and keep creating.
Hey ya!